So I'm about to do something kind of stupid. I've had this waist cinching corset since 2019. I got it for some specific outfits in which I no longer wear. Therefore, this thing has been sitting around for 6 years. And I was looking at it and I was like, hey, this is kind of the perfect blank canvas. So why, oh why, is this a stupid idea, you might ask? Well, first of all, this thing was not cheap. And second of all, I am not very confident in my ability to paint. I used to be an artsy fartsy girl. I used to keep a sketchbook, but admittedly, it has been quite a while. Therefore, this might come out like crap. I am not Bob Ross.
Talent is a pursued interest. In other words, anything that you're willing to practice, you can do. And this is no exception.
But hey, what better way to get back into art than defacing a semi-expensive waist cinching corset that I got custom made off of Etsy? First of all, let me introduce you to my concept. I sat on the couch this morning, putting off filming this video by actually being productive, mind you, and I created this concept. We are going for kind of a knightcore but meets celestial Whimsigoth look. Are we surprised? And though it looks beautiful on Procreate, I will admit I'm very nervous to recreate this look IRL. First, you might have noticed we have a lot of negative space. This canvas is very white, although actually it's like off-white, it's like cream IRL, as well as the laces. I really don't want to go through the hassle of unlacing this. So my first plan of attack is just chucking this into a dye bath and hopefully darken this, make it more blue, purple-ish. And then we can start on the painting. Welcome to my creepy basement, aka where we make all of our cosplay. First, I'm pre-rinsing the corset so that it's nice and wet, so that the dye will distribute evenly across the fabric. I spent like half the day looking for my red bucket that I usually use when I dye fabrics, so instead I'm using this trash can. Just don't use anything that you would typically serve or eat things out of. So if you're going to use a stock pot, definitely use one that you have specifically designated for dyeing fabrics. The same for any Tupperware that you might use as well. Now that the dye bath is ready, I'm just submerging the corset down in there, and hopefully we'll get the shade of blue that we're looking for. But first, while we wait for the corset to marinate, let me introduce you guys to this week's sponsor, Skillshare. If you know me, you know I love a good crafty craft. And if you also know me, you also know that my closet is completely stuffed with craft supplies. I have now on 2 occasions inherited the entire sewing collection from 2 different ladies that I barely knew. If I had a nickel for every time that happened, I'd have 2 nickels, which is not very much, but it's weird that it happened twice. But even though many of you would classify me as an avid crafter, I do not know what the hell I'm doing most of the time. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants, which is why I'm super grateful that Skillshare has agreed to sponsor my channel on numerous occasions. And in case you live under a rock, Skillshare is an online platform that offers thousands of classes on oodles of subjects, including art, illustration, animation, photography, graphic design, and all things creative and crafty. One of my favorite creators, both on YouTube and on Skillshare now, is Bernadette Banner. She's an extremely talented and skilled sewist, filmmaker, and dress historian. I have featured this class in the past, but I thought I'd bring it up again, especially if you're like me and you're still a little bit of a noob, and that is the hand stitching basics. In this class, she teaches you the fundamentals of hand stitching, including many different hand stitching techniques. But if you're a little bit more advanced, do not worry, there are plenty of classes on Skillshare that have offerings for many different skill levels. And if you're a little bit on the fence, I have some very good news for you. Skillshare is offering a 30-day free trial for the first 500 people that click my link down below or scan the QR code somewhere on my screen. Editing Scotty knows. A big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and supporting this channel. And now, let's try to decorate this corset. After a good soak in the dye bath, I was ready to dump out the dye and rinse out the corset, which is why I'm super grateful that I now have this utility sink thing in the basement. It's going to be perfect for dyeing fabrics in the future and not making a mess in my bathroom. Right now, I'm just rinsing out the corset, getting all of the excess dye out. I'm using like a lukewarm temperature of water. You don't want anything too hot, but you also don't want to use freezing cold water because then it won't actually rinse it properly.
The next day.
Admittedly, it did take a really long time to dry, but once it did, I really liked the color. It's a bit more of a muted blue. I was going for more vibrant, but nothing a little paint can't fix. And that's entirely the fault of the color that I bought. I bought navy blue instead of, what is it called, azul or something? I don't know. There's a more vibrant blue, but unfortunately my Walmart did not have it, so I had to work with what I had. So here I'm just using some different blues and kind of trying to create an airbrushed effect. And most of my paints are fabric paints. However, I did use a smattering of acrylic paint, but mixed in with the fabric paint. So I feel like it's fine. It's fine. And then for the sword sketch, I'm just using a white colored pencil. I do have some chalk pencils specifically for sewing, but I could not find them. So again, we're working with what we have. And in my defense, the Prismacolor pencils did work splendidly. And then because I'm a perfectionist, I did make a stencil for the moon. I just used 2 different sized cups to create the circles. That way I could create the perfect crescent shape and also keep the circle looking right, you know? Because I may identify as an artiste, but I cannot draw a circle, even if my life depended on it.
Am I going too fast for you, SpongeBob?
Next, it was just a matter of adding details, like the little swirly bits along the sides. Honestly, there really isn't any explanation I can give you for that process. Did you ever doodle in your notebook? Exactly that is what I was doing. I also went in and started adding stars, figuring out where I wanted to place those with paint. And speaking of paint, I also started going in and blocking in some colors because we are not going to just have a sketched out sword, it is going to be more rendered. Because though I do not think I can replicate the Procreate drawing, I am going to do my best. And by best, I mean I'm going to obsess about it and go over the same place over and over again with paint until it looks right. Because unlike in Procreate, there is no undo button when you screw up. And as someone who's been dabbling in digital art for nearly 20 years, that hurts. And if you hear me say 20 years and you think I'm over-exaggerating, I got my first digital drawing tablet in 2006. It actually could have been 2007, but close enough, okay? My teenage years are an honest-to-God blur. I just remember living on DeviantArt and Photoshop, and using that to procrastinate from doing my math homework. Okay, so I got a little distracted, but at some point you're gonna see me going back and forth between a fine tip paintbrush and a Posca pen trying to add highlights, and both were a pain in my rump, I'm not going to lie, I was struggling a bit. I feel like getting fine detail on fabric is a lot harder than it looks. With paper, you have a lot more control, whereas with fabric, since it has a lot of texture, you're kind of fighting against that texture a little bit, which is fine in instances like when I'm coloring in the moon because I'm just having to block in a lot of color, so I'm not really having to be as precise. So this part was a lot easier. I would say my one recommendation when working with fabric is to try to use brushes with a lot more of a stiffness to them, if that makes sense. Because that way I feel like you have a lot more control when it comes to spreading out the pigment, which is why I gravitate more towards the paint pens, but unfortunately my Posca pen was dry. To be honest, if you're going to do a similar project, I would highly recommend you get some really pigmented paint pens because again, you're going to have a lot more precision, a lot more control. For example, a couple years ago, I made my friend some custom painted Converse. I did some Tangled-esque murals on them, and because I used paint pens, I had a lot more precision and control, and I was able to add a lot more detail. Unfortunately, most of those pens, or at least in the colors that I needed, were dried out, and I was mostly using stuff that I already had. I should have gone out and got more paint pens, but you know, hindsight. But this is where I thrived, and we have an unexpected champion of this project, and that is my gel pen. Because on paper, this thing sucks and does not get the proper highlights done, but on fabric, it was quite amazing. Not only was it coming out super pigmented and opaque, but because the tip is very itty bitty, I was also able to get tiny little details, which is precisely, no pun intended, what I was looking for. Now, I don't know the science of this ink, if it's going to be durable and last, but it gave me exactly what I was going for, so I was happy. Because unlike the Posca pen, pigment was actually coming out. And unlike the paint on a brush, it was not going everywhere. So yeah, what a W for this tiny little cheap gel pen. So yeah, anyways, these are the results. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think this slayed, or do you think I failed? I personally really like how this turned out. Yes, the sword is not the most symmetrical. I could have done better on that, but as we discussed, painting on fabric is hard, whereas painting on a screen is much easier. And regardless of how it turned out, at least this thing will not just be sitting around. I actually have plans to use this at photo shoots and at the Ren Fair, even though it does kind of hinder my mobility just a little bit since it's a longer line corset. I think I could adapt, honestly. I also really like how this chemise looks with it. There is some contrast since this is more of a green teal blue. I know people will debate in the comments whether this is green or not, but there is a little bit of green in the sword. That just happened by accident. Sometimes when you mix paints and you're not an expert on color theory, it can go, you know, different directions, but it does pull a little bit teal. Not totally, but just enough. And I feel like this is very pre-Raphaelite, this like color combination. I originally did pair this with a purple chemise, and though I like that, it's a little too same because in the background and here it's a bit giving purple, even though it is a blue. Blues can go, you know, different directions. I am a professional. I really like it. I do need to take this chemise in. It is a bit big if I'm gonna wear an underbust. It's like all wanting to come out, so I had to be very strategic in how I pose. I love it. It's definitely a lot more fabulous than it was before. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. If you have any tips, tricks, or critiques, you can leave those down below as well. I welcome it, even if I am a little sensitive gal. Also, the algorithm loves it. If you guys like this video, make sure you hit the big like button because it really helps me out. Subscribe if you are not subscribed. And also big thank you to my patrons and my channel members for supporting my channel. If you would like to join, links are below, but it is not necessary to enjoy my content. Why am I out of breath right now? And of course, we have to thank our sponsor for this week for helping me keep the lights on. And as always, thank you for watching. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye. I have to approach carefully so I don't flash you. Bye-bye.